Okay, hi everybody. Welcome to the summit. Secrets to becoming a six-figure woman in a gig economy with confidence. Always want to remember the confidence part of this. We're not going to go through this scared and shaky. So welcome. I have an amazing guest today. Her name is Chris Castro. She's a visionary leader. She has a company called Shift Incorporated. So there's a whole lot to unpack there. So I'm going to pivot real quick to Chris and let her fully introduce herself. Chris, take it from here.
Okay. Hey, everybody. Dr. Catherine, thanks again for letting me participate. So I am a coach, but I am so much more than that. And I'm not saying that to make myself bigger. I'm saying that because a coach only facilitates the process. It's the entire arena of your willingness to participate in the adventure that makes it a wonderful transformation. And what I do is help ministry, marketplace, and community leaders really get to a place as to where they're having impact within their sphere of influence. And I focus on people who love Jesus, and so that they can absolutely have the best lives and have the most impact wherever they are. And so that's where I kind of sit in terms of my business focus.
Cool. So you said business in the marketplace, but it's faith-based, right? So
it is. And one of the interesting things is that if you love Jesus, your church life is not supposed to be separated from your regular life. And so many people don't realize this, that if Jesus is the center of your life, you should really be living out that belief system and that perspective and that way of doing things everywhere you are. It doesn't stop at the church door or stop at your office. It just goes all the way through. And I'm full of integrity. I'm who I am everywhere I am. And that's just who I am.
Okay, that's awesome. So you teach. Is it now? Do you just rely in? Is it just women, or is it just whoever your clients that come to you? Are you like what's your niche? As far as
I work with anybody, but I seem to have had more women clients, and I don't know why, but I've had both. I've had lots of men as well, but women tend to be a majority of the people I work with. But I'm honestly comfortable working with either.
Okay, all right, great. So I'm understanding that I know that, like, if I were to go to you as I'm a client, you're going to based on what you provide, expand my perspective on a faith-based ministry / into the workplace, into everything that you do, right? You're going to open my mind and my heart to that basic mission, right? Rather than the closed doors.
Absolutely.
Okay.
The impact that you have can be simply that smile to that person who's depressed walking down the street that you didn't even know that they're on their way to commit suicide. Okay. It could be that simple person in your family who is having a really hard time, and that you come alongside them and you love them in their difficult place. It could be that coworker who is going through a divorce and you have no idea, but you sense the Lord is telling you to take them out for coffee and to just encourage them in life, and you don't even know why. It's that holistic place of impact. It's not, shoving Jesus down anybody's throat, because I never do that. Yeah. I simply live my life, and if people want to know more, they ask or they investigate, one or the other.
That's so great. So how has being a faith-based entrepreneur, how has that impacted you financially? This again, the summit's about helping women really gain that stability and help to level up in these crazy trying times. So, how has that helped you? I can only imagine that it's been wonderful. Yeah.
Well, it's been a really interesting journey. And I'm going to take kind of a different approach than I think many of the other speakers. This is more about having confidence in the instability of life and business. When COVID-19 showed up a couple of months ago, it didn't even affect me. Now, did that mean that I was financially set and everything was great? No, it did not. But the Lord had been training me for years to trust in Him, to trust in His provision, to trust He was going to take care of the bills, to trust that He would meet all of my needs. So when COVID showed up, it was like, okay, like whatever, and I coasted through COVID because I had inner peace that was developed through the trials of learning how to live in faith rather than striving to make my own way. And that's basically the essence of what I want to focus on today, is that difference of striving in your own strength to make it all happen, or surrendering and releasing control and letting God do the work for you.
Even as you talk, it just sounds like, I don't have to carry this burden. I don't have to have this stress. Is there really a way to do this? So tell us, what is that? I mean, I know some of that, but to tell the ladies, how do we do this? Talk to us, Chris.
Well, okay, so the old saying about you better be careful what you ask for? Well, it's no different when you ask God for stuff. If you ask God to bring you to a new level of faith, He's going to bring trials and tribulations and things to grow you, okay?
All right.
And He's going to put people in your life to grow you. And so I've been a believer since I was a very young girl. So this is nothing new for me. But what has been new over the last 5 or 6 years is understanding what true surrender in the Lord is, and understanding that God really is who He says He is.
Wow, that's great. Okay, go ahead.
Because God's been Jehovah Jireh, the provider, my whole life, but I don't think I actually experienced it until I went through the crazy financial tests that I've gone through.
Okay, all right. So in practicality, okay, so you want your audience today, the women, listen to this, to learn how to trust rather than strive. Trust rather than strive. Because we all know in this line of work, you can strive, you can work really hard, and there can be ups and downs and a lot of discouragement, a lot of success, and all that kind of thing. What does that look like to somebody that doesn't know? They just don't know. It's like, how can I get a level of, wow, I have this just stability emotionally, mentally. I don't feel that I'm working myself to the bone, and I know everything's going to be better than fine. How do you do that? Like practicality, what does that look like?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, you really have to spend time with the Lord to learn and understand what He's telling you. If you're not certain of what God's plan is for you and your business and your money and every situation that you're facing, it's going to be really hard to get through it the best way. Now, it doesn't mean that you're not going to experience pain. It doesn't mean you're not going to struggle. It means the best way through it, because God always knows what that is. And so what I did through my crazy story, which I'll get into later, is I spent a lot of time learning what was God's voice versus my own, this is what I want, or this is what I think, or this is what I feel.
Okay.
And when I started learning that, then I had to practice it, which means that I, in my everyday life, not just in difficult circumstances, but in my everyday life, I had to practice listening for God. And that looked like me leaving the house. And when I would take a walk around the neighborhood, I would be like, all right, Lord, is there anything that you want me to tell somebody? Or is there anything you want me to do? And I would walk around the neighborhood, just walking, praying, or, basic part cardio, part listening for God practice. And then I would fill out the prompt, like, go over and tell that woman that I love her. And I'd be like, really? Okay. And so I'd walk over, and sometimes it would be a big reaction, like, oh, thank you. I was just, asking the Lord to tell me that he loved me. Or it was like, okay, like, thank you. Like, they didn't know what to do with it. And I would be like, all right, whatever, I did my job, and I walked away. And the more I practiced and the more I got it right, the more confidence I had to know what his voice sounded like. And so that translates into business, that when you are walking your path, whatever your business looks like, if God says do something, you just do it. And there have been times in my business where God said do something and it didn't make any earthly sense, but I did it anyway. And sometimes I really didn't see the results of it right away, but reflecting back, I saw, oh, so that's why God wanted me to do that. And with the finances specifically, as you learn to hear the Lord's voice and you start practicing financial trust, you become more and more generous with your money, more and more generous with your time, more and more generous with your skills and talents. And the Lord takes care of things. And again, there are so many stories. So when it's story time, Catherine, let me know, because I've got so many stories of my own, of really weird things that the Lord asked me to do that ended up turning out pretty cool in the end.
You just like scratch your head, just go, okay. But it's just such a different perspective, and such a, like I said, refreshing perspective to know that you're not alone. And that's what I'm hearing. You have a partnership and with the Lord, right? So you're saying, okay, I'm the hands and the feet, basically, and I'm kind of walking this out. You want me to do well. You're with me, kind of thing, right? So that's a beautiful partnership, because in this line of work, sometimes we do feel alone, and we kind of hit our heads against the wall and go, shoot, that didn't work. But you're saying, no, maybe you don't see the results right now, but because of that partnership with God, there will be something that comes from it, and you get to identify that. I think that's fantastic. Well, take just a couple of minutes and do tell us your story, your journey. It's really interesting to get to this point where you're at, and the shift in your business. So take it from here. Okay.
Sure. Well, as I said, I've been a believer my whole life, and I've always let God be the center of it. But fast forward, and in my late 40s, I got into a situation that was truly, truly difficult. And it was just a hard place to be in. And it wasn't anything that I was doing. It was just a situation that I was involved in. And in this situation, it ended up taking me to a place of brokenness. And it was because the situation wasn't being resolved in the way I wanted it resolved. It wasn't being addressed in the way I wanted it to be addressed. And truly, so much of it was unjust and unfair that I went through this whole season of just breaking and getting angry with God, angry with the situation, angry with everything. And a lot of bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness started taking root inside me. So, P.S., you don't function well when you're in that place anyway. And
I'm not laughing.
It's okay. I could laugh now.
Yeah, I'm not laughing at you. I'm with you.
You don't function well when you're in that place. And and I got to a point of complete brokenness. And I ended up going because I just lost myself. Like everything about who I was and the easygoing woman and the ability to manage and deal with anything disappeared. And I ended up deciding that I needed help. And so I went to an organization called Celebrate Recovery, which is a 12-step program that helps people deal with their baggage. It's any kind of baggage. It can be depression, it can be anger, it can be drugs, whatever. You have baggage, you bring it and you deal with it. And it's like a 12-step format. And so I went through this program. It was truly transformational. I dealt with a lot of the stuff that I had been broken about. And when I got through the program, I started giving my testimony. And then God asked me to do the strangest thing. He literally told me to pack up and go and speak at CRs across the country. But it wasn't that specific. It was just pack up and go. And I was like, well, where am I going? And he's like, do you trust me? And I was like, yeah. Now, this is not an audible conversation, okay? This is a series of conversations with him. And I fought and resisted, but after 4 confirmations, I pretty much had to understand that he really wanted me to go. And so I put everything in storage, packed up my car and left it. I'm like, well, where am I going?
Yeah.
And this ended up being a 12,000-mile adventure across the United States over 3 months. And then after that, it was another adventure. But the big picture is that during that entire experience, I never knew how I was going to get paid. I never knew where money was coming from. I never knew where I was going to eat. I never knew where I was going to sleep, except for the few stops of friends and family that I had planned on making.
Wow.
And supernatural provision after provision after provision happened. And it was an amazing story. I ended up writing a book about it called Crazy Might Be a Blessing in Disguise, which if you go to my website, you'll see it there.
Good.
And that became the first layer of understanding that God really does take care of me. Now, again, I knew this logically my whole life, but I didn't understand it experientially until this crazy trip. And then after the crazy trip, you know, some time went by and life happened, and that's another whole long story. But I'm going to fast forward past all of that to the financial piece. Like money came and went, came and went, came and went, and there was hardly ever any stability, but the bills always got paid. And that's how the Lord trained me to trust him, by not looking at my circumstances, but believing in his word and what he says and his promises and who he is. And then last year, right around this time, I didn't have a whole lot of money in the checkbook, but the Lord said, hey, I want you to give money to this organization. And I'm like, well, God, how's that going to happen? You know, I don't have a lot of money in the checkbook, but you know, you're God and you've paid the bills, so I guess you're going to figure it out. And so I gave $100 and I charged it, but I gave $100. And that month I had made enough money to give $300 total out, 10%. But that was it. Like, I didn't know how rent was going to get paid. And no lie, 2 weeks later, I received a $500 check in the mail that I wasn't expecting. And I was like, huh, that's really interesting. Wow. And so I said to God, well, I can't outgive you, God. And so I ended up saying, I'm going to do this again, but not for the money receiving piece, I bet that if I constantly surrender my finances, that you're going to take care of me, but I'm going to do it in a bold way by giving more as a step of faith. And so every month I started giving more than the month before I ever knew the money I was going to make. I just made a habit of giving more every month. And after 6 months of doing that, I was giving almost $600 a month out, and I never knew how the bills were going to get paid, and they always got paid. And it became this amazing place of, wow, God really does take care of you. Like, again, I knew this logically, but not experientially.
Yeah.
And that set me free from financial anxiety and financial worry. Now, do I still get anxious? Of course, I'm human, but I manage it so much more quickly now because I've seen and experienced the Lord's faithfulness. And so I created this whole program called I Cannot Give You God, which is a 90-day program. And I had some people go through it and they got set free financially. And so it's been this really cool experience to pass on opportunities to be able to help people experience what the Lord actually means when he says things like, don't worry, I'm going to take care of you, and stop striving, I'm in control, and all kinds of things like that.
Yeah. Oh gosh. The how you kind of provided the step, the correlation between, it's so backwards. I give, and then what I need comes. I give, and then what I need comes. And it would be really frightening for people that don't understand, but there's a principle in that, and how scary. But you had to learn that in little steps, in
Yes.
definitely little steps. And then those are faith steps. It's like, but
absolutely. But let me qualify that by saying that I only gave what God told me to give.
Okay.
It's not like I just went out of my way. I literally said, what am I giving and to who? Because if he didn't bless it, it's not going to get blessed. But if he blesses it, you can trust it.
Okay. And I think that's a good qualifier right there. Mm-hmm. It's just that it goes back to hearing. I'm just hearing. I have my partner, God, and we're doing this, and I'm hearing him, and then I walk in that way, and I give what he does, and then all of that comes from that. So I think that what I want to do is this really connects with where we're at with this economy and where we're at with a gig economy, where you really have to have, you just really don't have the stability any longer of one career, one job, and you can count on it, and it's going to be there, it's going to fully provide for you. Or if you've built a career, we just really have recently just watched things where did that company go? Where did this company go? So that has shaken, especially women, how we are, to the core. And I mean that in a good way, but we just get like a little bit more anxious, and to the core. It's like, how am I going to provide? How am I going to do this? And I've got a lot of responsibilities, and how can I have all these different jobs, and how can I have all these different gigs? And which helped, it was very helpful. But I think your perspective, it really adds to that gig economy, because not only are you saying you're in peace, it's in the financials are in different places. You're just led there. Is that right? You're led to go there. Or they come to you. So it's connected to this, but it's a different perspective. Am I saying that right? So
yeah, I would say that you're absolutely correct. And the best way to phrase it is, when you allow Jesus to be in control of your life, you are no longer responsible for anything other than he tells you. So it's that place of surrender. And there's another piece. You have to stop looking at your circumstances as they are and look at them through the promises that the Lord gives you. So there were times during that whole 2-3 year period where things were rough. I mean, just rough. But I had to look through the rough and say, no, God's got this. God's going to take care of this, whether it was a relationship, whether it was my finances, whether it was my stuff, whether it was my car. God's going to take care of it. And he did. And it was looking past what's going on now and trusting that he's going to take care of it. So I wasn't responsible for anything but being obedient and doing what he told me to, which is my part. And the faith piece, which is believing that he's going to take care of it.
Yeah, I think, but what you did was you had the fight of faith. You had to
Hmm.
fight for your faith and to
Yes.
stay with that, regardless of what you're seeing, regardless of
Yes.
what's going on. That's a fight of faith. And that went
Hmm.
on for a while for you, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, it never stops. It just,
Yeah.
sometimes you have easier seasons than other seasons,
Yeah.
but it's never going to disappear until we die and go to heaven.
So you can tell the women today that that no matter this season or this economy or this COVID or this, the instability, we can't even plan a month from now. We don't know what's going to happen. So, but they can be at peace and know that things will be okay. They'll be taken
Hmm.
care of, and to align themselves with God. I love that. I love that. So, what would you say is absolutely your struggle now? You have your own company, and actually, I'm going to ask two questions of that. You have your own company; it's called Shift, and I'm really
Hmm.
interested into why that's named that, because I know there's a meaning to that. And then also, then would you just tell me also, what do you struggle with now? I mean, we're always within this walking this out, but what is the real struggle now? Okay.
Sure. Well, I'll start with the company name. So the company name came from a place where when I was early in my business ownership coaching arena, I found that when things started to transform for people was when they shifted to a new perspective, when they shifted to a different perspective, or when they shifted to a different way of doing things. It involved a proactive shift. And so I thought that's perfect. And so that's why I called my company Shift, because I am a catalyst for creating environments for people to shift so that they're in alignment with what their goals are or what they're trying to do, whatever reason they hired me, or if I'm speaking on stage, whatever it is that I'm on stage for, whatever, it doesn't matter. But the shift is important because we all get stuck in limited beliefs or in limited ways of doing things. And sometimes we have to break through to a different way. And that shift is what gets you there.
That's great. And so you're named it Shift, and that's what you provide. And that's
Correct.
your expertise. You just can see
Correct.
that and help them. Wonderful. Okay, so what do you struggle with now?
Well, now it's not so much a struggle as much as it is, well, now that, in-person meetings have almost disappeared across the country. It's the same as every other business owner. It's like, well, all right, now how do I meet people to generate interest in what I do? So it's that with everybody. But here's the thing, to go back to what my whole premise is.
Okay.
I don't have to do anything other than what the Lord tells me. So I literally am at peace with that. I'm meeting people online and I talk to them and I have conversations with them. And sometimes it's just casual and maybe they'll lead me to somebody else and maybe they won't. But my job is to just connect whoever the Lord highlights or whoever comes in front of me. Just take some time to get to know them. It doesn't have to be about business. It just has to be about getting to know you. And the Lord may or may not do something with it. But I can be at peace because I don't have to strive. He's in charge of my business. He's in charge. If I am fully aligned with him and doing everything that he told me to, and I'm walking out all the business principles and I'm staying in alignment with everything that isn't full of integrity with being a Jesus believer, then I'm not in charge anyway. I literally just one day at a time. Sometimes it's 1 second at a time, depending on the day.
All right. Do you ever see your business going to shift into maybe full-time ministry? I don't know.
You know what? It's interesting that you say that because I don't blur the lines between business and ministry. A friend of mine coined it this way, and I love this. She calls her business a businessry because the way she approaches it is it's for profit and she does everything that she needs to do, but she's constantly listening for the Lord to bring opportunities to help people, to serve, to encourage.
Okay.
So it's this place of integration where it's not separate. So I don't need to be in ministry. I'm simply Jesus loving business owner that listens to the Lord and does what he says. That may be coaching you to something. It may be smiling at you, whatever he says.
Okay. Yeah. So there is no, separation. Was there a time where your mindset, because I know that this happens to many, I guess business women when they first start out, business is all about making profits and doing well financially. You want to, the bottom line, I teach business, it's profits, right? So, but yet there's that part that wants to serve and wants to do well, just really has that heart for that individual, that client, that company. It's like, oh, okay. And you kind of lose that, I don't want to say you lose perspective, but I guess what was the question I'm trying to, you know what I'm saying, where you're just like, okay, this is a business. I need to make sure that I'm making some profit here, where it would be easy to just like, no, I'm just here to help. Does that make sense? A lot of women have struggled with that. And then they've had to learn. It's a learning thing where they've had to learn, no, I'm in business. Yeah, I'm going to be a very giving person, but I'm in business, which means I need to make those profits.
Well, that's the whole thing with healthy boundaries is if the Lord has tasked you with this business, you are in business and you need to treat it like a business.
Excellent.
And you absolutely can serve, but you do it within business boundaries. Like, for instance, I have a free coffee and conversation when people want to work with me, and we talk about what they're up to. We talk about why they might be interested in hiring me, and I might give them some tips and tricks and tools, depending on what it is.
Right.
But if they want to do the work of transformation, they actually have to hire me.
Yeah. Right.
But sometimes when I have events, I'll scholarship people on events. And that's because the Lord says scholarship some people, because he knows there's people who can't afford to be there that need to be there. And so I scholarship them in. I make no money, but they come in and they get served. And I've done my absolute best and they have a wonderful experience. And that's it. And I'm okay with that, because guess what? The Lord gives me a ton of stuff. It's nothing for me to give transformation. I do it because that's the way the Lord gifted me.
Right.
And so, but I've got healthy boundaries. I know when to give away and I know when not to.
Okay. Thank you, Chris, because that's women who are listening. That's the key right there. That's a tip. That's a strategy in doing this type of work. You have to understand those boundaries. You have to know the boundaries. There's boundaries in business. There's boundaries in having a real heart like you do to just serve and help people. And there's those boundaries, and you have to know those, and you have to be really keen to those. So that's an excellent, excellent tip. What's a couple more as we kind of wrap up this interview? What's a couple more tips, maybe strategies that you would like to leave with the women today, that you feel like, yes, they need to know this?
Well, the first one is to go back to really knowing the voice of the Lord. And one tip I can give you, there is a book that I read that completely changed and helped me hear the Lord's voice better. It's a book by Mark Verkler called 4 Keys to Hearing God's Voice. I mean, it was just transformational for me. It's on Amazon. Go get it. I don't make any money. It's just an awesome book. Okay. Another one is the old phrase, no risk, no reward. And it's true. If you don't take a faith risk, if you don't do, like, if you know the Lord is leading you forward, or you have a sense that he wants you to do something, if you don't risk it, you don't get the reward of the experiential gain, as well as whatever blessing might be attached to that request. So no risk, no reward. Learn to take bold faith risks. Even if they're baby steps at the beginning, the more baby steps you take, the more leaps you're going to take later. And I am a perfect example of that. I mean, I've been a leaper my whole life, but now I call myself a cliff jumping with the Lord person. Like I now cliff jump with the Lord, because after learning how to leap, I started leaping off cliffs. And it's been the most crazy, amazing, wonderful experience ever.
I love that. Okay. Okay, everybody hear that? Okay, jump off those cliffs carefully, carefully. Chris, you're a visionary. You're very inspiring. I want to thank you. Thank you for speaking to the women today, being a part of this. Your perspective is very, very much needed as we go into this economy. I do want to tell the women, just within this summit, you'll find her website, you'll find Chris's information. She has a book available and all kinds of coaching opportunities and businesses. So look her up, okay? Thank you, Chris.
Thank you.